You know, somebody famous said, "May you live in interesting times." Boy, were they correct. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time that we appreciate when we get a chance to spend time with the governor of the state of Maryland. It's called Talk with the Governor, a segment where we're able to bring you Governor Larry Hogan and take your phone calls where we can talk with the governor for issues around the state. And Governor Larry Hogan, how are you on this fine morning?
Good morning, C4. It's great to be with you. By the way, I love the George Thorogood "Bad to the Bone" intro.
You like that? You
there.
like that?
Yeah.
I'm sure that as an aficionado, you appreciate that.
I am. I love that song.
Well, let's take "Bad to the Bone" to another degree, shall we? And that is the fact that, as everyone is talking about this morning, President Donald Trump had a very different type of press conference yesterday on a variety of subjects. And just as a governor yourself having to occasionally have press conferences, I've got to ask you, because what did you think of yesterday's press conference?
Well, this is embarrassing to say, I guess, but I didn't get a chance to see the press conference because I was pretty busy here in Maryland all day. And I don't know what time it was, but we had a full schedule. And we had an event last night for warriors at our house that were wounded, guys in from Walter Reed, and so I didn't even see any part of the press conference, but I read about it in this morning's paper. About it seemed to go hour and 17 minutes and ramble around a lot of topics, but frankly I get a chance to catch it.
Well, if you get a chance, do so.
Not sure I would want to catch it, but
it would be very interesting. But a connection to the Oval Office and to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue included this week legislation that was passed that didn't need your signature. It was a resolution, joint resolution, passed by the State Senate and the House of Delegates, expanding powers to the State Attorney General's office after 150 years of having our Attorney General with the restraint of having to at least go to the governor or make sure people understand this, the governor or the Maryland State Legislature, to kind of make sure that the Attorney General has the backing of the state to enter into lawsuits. They passed a resolution along strict party lines, Governor, that would unilaterally allow the Attorney General to file lawsuits against the federal government. I just want to get your thoughts about that.
Well, I thought it was outrageous and disgraceful, and quite frankly, it was probably the lowest point I've ever seen in the legislature. This is the first time since 1864 that they have altered the powers of the Attorney General, and this blanket resolution, which doesn't even come to the governor's office for signature or for veto, just automatically grants wide-ranging powers to the Attorney General to basically sue the federal government, or I guess anyone else, for anything he wants, anytime, without any checks or balances or restraints. And in the past, he would have to get the approval of the governor or the legislature. Now he can ignore both branches of government and just go off on some wild, crazy effort, whatever he woke up that morning wanting to do. And it's outrageous. It's probably unconstitutional. The person that would have to challenge its constitutionality would be himself, Brian Frost, the Attorney General. So it's a complicated and convoluted process. It's who knows how many tens of millions of taxpayer dollars may be wasted chasing windmills and trying to insert themselves into issues that should not be in the purview of our state Attorney General. And this is, for just one horrible bill out of 30 different individual pieces of legislation that have already been introduced just in this session that attempt to change the rules and to limit my gubernatorial or executive authority.
Well, Governor, I just wanted to jump in at one moment on the issue of resources to make your point, which is as soon as this resolution passed, the very first thing Attorney General Brian Frost did was ask the legislature for an additional beginning now of $1 million, because now with this power, he's going to need more money, which makes your very point.
Well, and it's even worse than that, C4, because the resolution cannot have any. The resolution that they pass says there is no expense and there will be no cost. That's why you can do a resolution. And then they turned around with the very next bill and said, we just lied to you by saying there's no cost because now we need money because there's going to be cost. So, it's absurd. I mean, they don't have any regard for the law whatsoever.
One of the problems also, Governor, and this is one of the things I think you have tried to do, and you made it clear during your State of the state address, when you talked about the fact that you wanted a more bipartisan approach to how we do things in Maryland. This piece of legislation, this joint resolution, is only going forward because of President Donald Trump. If there was a President Hillary Clinton, you and I both know there would be no attempt to expand the Attorney General's power.
Well, of course not. But it's and if there were a Democratic governor, they wouldn't either. So
exactly.
It's really we do live in interesting times, but I'm trying to stay focused on the job that the people of Maryland elected me to do, which is to try to turn this state around. And we've got, my State of the State was just recently. We had 31 different major policy proposals to try to change Maryland for the better, and they've done nothing with any of them. And the only two things they've accomplished were just about at the halfway point in our 90-day legislative session. It's 50 days or something. And the only two things they've accomplished was this crazy, changing the rules for the first time since 1864 so they can play politics in Washington. And they've hired somebody full-time at the Maryland Democratic Party to attack me. That's the extent. I mean, before the session, they said our primary mission in life and our main objective for the next 90 days is to attack Governor Hogan, hurt his credibility, and somehow try to find a way to tie him to Donald Trump in Washington, even though I didn't even support the president. So it's they've at least that's one promise that they seem to be delivering on. They are focused on nothing but politics.
Let's get your calls in here. 410-467-WBAL. 410-467-WBAL is our Talk with the Governor segment. Governor Larry Hogan is on board. Let's get William in Catonsville. William, you're on with Governor Larry Hogan. Go ahead, William.
Governor, Senator, good morning, and thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Governor, I have a concern and a question about health care for senior citizens. On December the 31st, 2015, my mother was in a health care facility because she required 24/7 coverage. When an attendant tried to lift her out of a wheelchair, the attendant dropped her, resulting in a serious injury, which caused her to be transported 911 to the local emergency room. As a result, the 1st of January 2016, I contacted the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene's Office of Health Care Quality. I filed a complaint. They gave me a case number. Governor, in September, I had not heard of 2016. I hadn't heard from them. I wrote you a letter. In October, you wrote me a letter back telling me that I would be hearing from them. Governor, in December, I still hadn't heard from them. And on December the 5th, I wrote you another letter. Governor, I never got a reply from you on that December the 5th, 2016 letter. I still haven't got a reply from either you or the health department. And sadly, Governor, my mother passed away last Sunday, not knowing the resolution to her complaint. Governor, I'm sorry, sir. I am truly disappointed.
Well, William, let me do this. William, let me do this, because I think what you're talking about is a very important issue. Of course, I might express my prayers on the loss of your mother as well. Can I put you on hold? Let me get your information directly, and I will pass it on to the governor's office, because I think that's the most appropriate way, William, to handle this, okay?
Senator, I haven't had any luck out of the governor getting a response.
Go ahead,
sir.
Governor.
First of all, I'm so sorry about the loss of your mother, and I don't know anything about your case or DHMH or where the letter is, but I promise you, if you give us your contact information offline here to C4 show,
we're getting it,
we'll
Governor.
make sure, I promise you, that a senior member of my staff will get back in contact with you immediately. And our number, if you need it, is 410-974-3901. But if we get your info, I'll promise to have somebody call you back very shortly.
We'll get it, Governor. We're getting that right now. Producer's getting that.
Thank you.
Let's talk about, when you look, Governor, at what's going on right now with the budget, and you hear, the discussion about you're cutting money. I mean, we hear this every year, it seems like, from the legislators in Annapolis. Will you just, once again, repeat for the umpteenth time, you're not cutting money to education, are you, Governor?
So this is the third year in a row, C4, that we've had record funding for education. Education is our number one priority. No governor in the history of the state has ever spent more on education. Not only did we have dramatic increases in operational funding for K through 12, we also had huge increases in school construction and in higher education. So there's some people in the city of Baltimore that just falsely put out ridiculous statements that said Governor Hogan is cutting money for the schools in Baltimore. We actually provided 100% of the funding, didn't cut a single penny. But what happens is the legislature and the former governor put rules in place with automatic legislative formulas that if the wealth goes up and the enrollments go down, the dollars they get are adjusted. So Baltimore City's had dramatically declining numbers of students. The economy's getting better in Maryland, so the city's getting wealthier. And the legislative formulas reduced what they're qualified and able to get by $40-some million. Had nothing to do whatsoever with us or our budgeting. And it's so if somebody says we cut education, it's not true. We actually increased it. If they talk about why didn't we get this extra $46 million, it's because the legislature, which is made up of 2/3 Democrats in both houses, the legislature of this state and the Baltimore City delegation all voted for it. And that's what mandated the different numbers.
And also,
has
Governor,
absolutely nothing to do with me.
If I can add, Governor, decisions made by the mayor, not this current mayor, but the former mayor and Baltimore City Council to give tax breaks to big developers elevated the taxable rate here, a property rate in Maryland, which goes against the very Thornton formula that funds things. If people don't understand what I'm saying is there were local decisions made which then reduced the amount of state money because of a formula. Governor, we're going to get you right back in one moment.
Great.
It's our Talk with the Governor segment with Governor Larry Hogan. Want your phone calls, 410-467-WBAL. Governor Larry Hogan is on board as our Talk with the Governor segment. And Governor, you know, a lot of issues you talked about during your State of the State address, and I know you got a lot on your agenda you want to get through, but I just want you one more time, explain to people why it is so important in reference to the roadkill bill, why it is important to leave the structure we have in place where the governor deals with road projects and transportation projects.
Well, yes, thank you, C4. Well, over the past 8 years, the state has pretty much ignored and neglected our transportation infrastructure. They robbed or drained or siphoned $1 billion out of the transportation trust fund and spent it on other things. I promised that we were going to focus on rebuilding the infrastructure, improving our transportation projects, and we're moving forward on the top priority transportation projects in every single jurisdiction in the state, all 24 of them. And these are priority projects that have been going through the process that the local governments have identified, that have been fully vetted for a number of years and just have been stuck on the shelf. We finally put the money in, replenished the $1 billion in the trust fund, and we're fixing and building roads all across the state, all 65 structurally deficient bridges that we inherited, and major road improvements to end traffic congestion and make roads safer all over. And the legislature last year, another partisan attempt to just somehow take authority away from me. This system we have in Maryland has worked great for 34 years or 38 years, something like that. They passed a bill that says you shall do this, you must do that. I think it says shall in it 59 times, and it sets up a scoring criteria that is ludicrous. That, for example, doesn't even take traffic consideration in, and it was written by a lobbyist for a project in Montgomery County, and they passed it without even knowing what it said, and I vetoed the bill, and they overrode the veto. And so we are pushing for a repeal of this bill because it basically eliminates most of the improvements into transportation everywhere in the state. Baltimore City loses almost everything. Baltimore County loses every single project. Prince George's County now will lose every project. Montgomery County gets one project, but not the ones they really want, like the improvements to 270, interchanges on the Beltway. It's an absurd piece of legislation that will kill 66 of the top 73 most important transportation projects in the state. And if it is not repealed, that is exactly what will happen. It will be disastrous, and we won't be able to improve transportation, and it will probably result in most of the members of the legislature being defeated in the next election.
One of the things, Governor, I want people to understand, because I know this, and I know that when you were saying shall, you're thinking people know. The significance of what the governor's saying is that when you see the word may in legislation, that is discretion given in implementing the bill. When they use the word shall, it's the first thing I learned, Governor, when I got to Annapolis. Shall means you must. That discretion is removed. So the significance of what Governor is saying is that word shall that appears multiply throughout the bill takes away the discretion, Governor, that they keep saying you have. They keep saying you have all this discretion.
Right. There's two complete falsehoods that they're spreading. One, they say this bill doesn't really do anything. The governor doesn't have to follow it. That's nonsense. That's not what the attorneys at the transportation say. That's not what our department says. That's not what anyone thinks, except for a couple of people in the legislature. But it does have 59 times you shall do this, and then they say you don't have to really do it if you don't want to.
Yeah, right.
Secondly, they say, and their whole argument is, well, Governor Hogan's just helping the rural counties who voted for him, and it's at the peril of the urban counties. That's also a complete lie. 60% of the projects we're doing are in the 3 jurisdictions that have the most population and the ones that didn't vote for me. So Prince George's is the biggest recipient. Montgomery and Baltimore counties in Baltimore City get more than half the money under it, but all of their projects are also being killed by the legislature. So it's they just pretty much are talking out of their, making things up, and they've been saying it over and over again. And for over a year now, we've been just talking the truth and telling people. Maryland Association of Counties strongly supports the repeal of this bill because none of the counties want to lose this money. I would think, somewhere close to 90% of the people in the state want to have their transportation system improved, and they're pretty irate right now at the legislators who are trying to stand in the way of all this progress.
Let's get Jason in Gambrels. Jason in Gambrels, Maryland, you're on with Governor Larry Hogan. Go ahead, Jason.
C4, Governor, good morning, and thank you for taking my call.
Good morning.
The one question that I do have is there anything that we plan to do regarding the gun violence in Baltimore?
Well,
Governor?
Gun violence is certainly one of there's huge issues in Baltimore, and that's probably one of the biggest. I've sat down with the mayor on a number of occasions and talked with her. We've put much state funding in. We're just about to put some more state funding in to help Baltimore City Police, but there really are no easy answers. We're going after a lot of it is driven by the heroin and opioid trade, which we've been trying to hit from all directions. And it really is out of control. I know that I have faith in the police commissioner in Baltimore, who I think is a good guy and who's working hard to implement some changes. And I believe that the new mayor is certainly much more focused on this issue than the previous mayor was. And the state is going to provide as much help as we can because it's spiraling out of control, and it's a dangerous and scary situation.
And Governor Larry Hogan, our mayor, Mayor Catherine Pugh, and Police Commissioner Kevin Davis, when President Donald Trump said he would provide assistance to Chicago with what they're going through, they both expressed jointly that they would accept and wish to get whatever help the federal government have. I would assume at some point that might coordinate with what you're doing as well.
Well, I hope so, but I hope that the Attorney General filing suits every day against the president doesn't keep him from trying to help us on these things.
That's a good point. Let's get to Barbara in Baltimore. Barbara, you're on WBAL with Governor Larry Hogan. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, C4, and thank you so much for taking my call. And it's for crime. It might help to lock up people and leave them in jail instead of letting them out the same day.
Mm-hmm.
But that was not my main thing I wanted to ask is, because I haven't heard anything as far as your position on sanctuary, I'm assuming that you are for it. And I'd like to know whether or not you've allowed unvetted refugees into the state anywhere and have the people who receive them been notified.
All right, hold on a second, Barbara. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, as you know, the governor has absolutely nothing to do with immigration, so I don't get the opportunity to allow or not allow people into the state. And in fact, during the Obama administration, there were a number of refugees, mostly from Syria, that were put into the state, but we were in no way even notified of them. Didn't know how many, when, where. The federal government does that on their own and does not notify the states. So that's one falsehood. But then there's talk about sanctuary cities and sanctuary states, and who knows what the definition of those is these days. Everybody has their own thought about what it means. I do know that there's some talk here about we're going to ignore federal law, and regardless of what your position is on this issue, when you take an oath to uphold the Constitution and laws of the United States, you don't really get to pick and choose which ones. If you want to fight to change the law in Washington, you can. But as governor, there are a number of laws I just flat out don't like. In fact, including some of the ones that I vetoed, like this roadkill bill. But I don't get to pick and choose. I have to follow the law. So it's not an easy question to say, do you want sanctuaries or not? It's a complicated legal question all across the country, and it's basically can state and local governments ignore and or break federal law? And my answer is no.
As a matter of fact, Governor, your Department of Public Safety, when it came to the Baltimore City Detention Center, which is run by the state right here in Baltimore, when the question was asked, they said they will follow federal law. Is that when it comes to the issue of working with immigration and ICE, that's what you'll do?
By the way, so most people are focused on the current turmoil and concern over the most recent executive order, but the Obama administration requested, for the past 2 years while I was governor, that our state authorities cooperate with ICE, and if we have people arrested for crimes or in our correctional system in Maryland, that we will cooperate with the federal authorities as we're legally obligated to do so. And we did commit to the Obama administration that Maryland would cooperate with the federal authorities. So it's hard to say that now that we have a different president, we're not going to follow the federal law.
We have 1 minute, Governor. Please, what's on your agenda, at least moving forward?
Well, we're really focused on a couple of things, C4, besides, redistricting and ethics are two of the big, we have the most gerrymandered, most unfair district lines of any state in the country, and most people want free and fair elections and nonpartisan drawing of district lines. Almost everyone in Maryland agrees with that, and we even got Marty O'Malley and a couple other guys to finally come around and support our position.
Epiphany. Did you hear his epiphany?
It's an epiphany. He saw the light or he felt the heat or something, but we're happy to have him. And then we've got a really important, and ethics. We've got a number of legislators, former legislators indicted, and we've got some really crazy stuff going on down here that's inappropriate and unethical, and we're pushing for tougher ethics laws that need to get done. And lastly, our Manufacturing Jobs Initiative, which will bring thousands and thousands of jobs to Baltimore City. It's a bipartisan piece of legislation. We have a lot of support, and we just hope that the legislature does not play politics on that one, because we think it can have a real impact on putting people to work in areas where they desperately need jobs.
Governor Larry Hogan, it's always great to speak with you. We'll get with you next month on our Talk with the Governor segment. Take care, Governor.
Thank you, C4.
I appreciate the time. Everybody stay right here.